Welcome into an extra cold Stone Cold Stros. I'm Brandon Strange with Charlie Palillo and Josh Jordan. Follow them on X at Palillo and at Josh Jordan 975 and read their work on sportsmap.com. On today's episode, we're going to talk about some cryptic tweets from Mr. October. We're going to talk about Anthony Santander in the Astros' future. Talk about, have the Astros missed their window on Hunter Brown? Ooh, I would hate to think about that. Before we get into all that, just a reminder, click like on the video if you want to see more off-season content. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. Be sure to click the bell for notifications so you know as soon as new bonus content drops. And if you're on the go, we're on all your favorite podcast apps like Apple and Spotify. And wherever you consume the content, just know we appreciate the support. Every show, guys, this off-season has seemingly started off with an Alex Bregman update. Status unchanged, so we can move on, right? Well, no, not so fast, says former Astros front office advisor Reggie Jackson. Jackson tweeted over the weekend, quote, "Good luck, Astros, with signing Alex Bregman. He's a very important piece. He's an Astro through and through. He's a baseball player all the way," end quote. Dana Brown has already said talks with Bregman stalled, so they pivoted. They've made subsequent moves. Guys, what in the world do you think Mr. October is talking about here?
What is the likelihood that Reggie opened up his flip phone, realized the battery's dead on this, so reached for his BlackBerry or whatever that thingy is, and in trying to clear out old messages, accidentally hit send or post or tweet, if that's still the term that we would use, X. Odd timing. Reggie left the employ of the Astros, but it's not like he's doing Bregman a favor. But time warp. A tweet from the crypt, perhaps more than a cryptic tweet.
It's interesting. Looks like Bregman's leaving. They kind of moved on from Reggie Jackson. So maybe Reggie's feeling a little bit of like, hey, don't forget about us. We were really important to this. But it's not just him. The timing is really weird, right? Because we think the Astros are out of it. They made their moves. They figured that wasn't going to happen with Bregman. But we have this guy, Pete Caldera of NewJersey.com. He's creating all these other people to write these articles that the Astros may not be out on Bregman, basically just because he predicted that Bregman's going to end up re-signing with the Astros for a $175 million deal. So I just think you see these little things, people make wacky predictions, and then all of a sudden other writers, aggregators are turning it into content like, oh, the Astros may not be out on Bregman quite yet. I think it's a lot of clickbait stuff. I would like to see Bregman return, but it doesn't make any sense. The Astros have altered their offseason based on the fact they don't see him coming back. It just wouldn't make any sense to go back there to Bregman. And with Reggie Jackson weighing in, it's all just really weird. Maybe there's a reason they moved on from Reggie Jackson. Maybe it's past his time and it's time for him to enjoy his family and retirement.
Now, for those who want to cling to a shred of hope or fantasy, I mean, how many times did Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor, Google them, renew vows and remarry 3-4 different times? So after the presumptive Astros-Bregman emotional divorce, could they reconcile? The path is there in that since they traded for Isaac Paredes, they could trade him and recreate an opening at third base. Whereas if you sign a free agent, you can't trade that guy until June 15th. But Paredes was a trade pickup. But I mean, come on here. 6 years, 156. Bregman turns that down. Obviously, no team has come in way over the top at this point. I would give it a better shot that Scott Boras whispered sweet nothings in a reporter's ear that, you might want to let your Yankees or the Red Sox know that the Astros could still be in on Alex Bregman. May want to up that offer. Yeah, okay.
That is classic Boras, though. And I don't necessarily rule that out, that Boras could be, seeding these news stories, but I don't know. I as someone who's overseen social media, sometimes you misschedule a post. I like Charlie's theory about a possible butt tweet But to Josh's point, I think it's probably more likely that we're seeing why Jackson's no longer an advisor with Houston. One thing we'd be remiss if we didn't at least briefly touch upon: Hector Gomez, who works in digital media and whose Twitter bio proclaims himself as an MLB insider, he reported last week that the Astros' biggest threat to the Blue Jays in landing Anthony Santander, that the Astros are the Blue Jays' biggest threat in landing Anthony Santander. How realistic of a threat do you think Houston is to sign Santander? Are we talking DEFCON 1 or Michael Scarn's threat level midnight?
Look, the Astros outfield, as it presently projects for 2025, is horrible. Right down near, maybe even at the bottom of Major League Baseball, with Yordan Alvarez ticketed for, if not exclusively designated hitter role duties, overwhelmingly so, we presume. So the Astros 2025 outfield, as we chat, Myers, McCormick, Dubon. So Santander, coming off a 44 home run season, he'd been a pretty steady major leaguer over a 3-4 year period, but there are clear red flags to me, if not non-starters, with the Astros and Santander at this point. That he's a switch hitter is nice. Left-handed hitters, the Astros have Yordan in what projects to be their primary lineup, and that's it, right? Caratini, when he's filling in. Singleton's a bench guy with the acquisition of Christian Walker. Oh, yeah, Santander's a bad outfielder. So pre-Christian Walker, the idea that, well, maybe he could play some first base, though he'd only played 7 games there over the last couple of years, but as a possibility, that's off the table now. With Yordan DHing close to full-time, that means Santander is an everyday outfielder. Well, you can hide a marginal outfielder to a good extent in the small left field of Minute Maid Park. But another thing about Santander, 44 home runs, blew away his career high. Well-timed for him in his salary drive. But as we've seen, there's not a long line of suitors saying, sure, 5 years, 125 million, 140 million, whatever, you name it, you got it. Because he's poor defensively, he's not fast, he's a low on-base percentage guy, 3 teens, I believe, last season. He's a high strikeout guy. So for the Astros to go 4 years on 30-year-old Anthony Santander when going more than 6 years on 27, 28-year-old Kyle Tucker, oh no! I'm just not seeing Santander in the Astros cards.
I mean, they sure have a need that we don't have to argue about that. There's, it could be really bad if Jake and Chaz just kind of continue doing what they're doing and stay healthy. You're still going to be like, oh, woof. Is that going to be enough? I know the defense is pretty good from those guys, but why did this team get knocked out of the playoffs last year? They couldn't score any runs. So the one thing that it makes me pause a little bit with Santander is the reported offer to him is 4 years, $82 million from the Blue Jays. A lot of times the Blue Jays have to pay a little bit more to get people to want to go play in Canada, even though I hear it's beautiful in Toronto. But this does sound like a contract the Astros might entertain. It's basically the Christian Walker deal with an extra year, $20 million a year, 3 years, and then this one would be 4 years. So we heard Santander wanted a 5-year contract. That's what he's been asking for this whole offseason reportedly, and it doesn't seem like that's coming. So that might make the Astros a little more interested. Charlie mentioned he just turned 30. 4-year deal, that's not taking you, way up in years. So it could make some sense, but we're hearing all these reports about how they're trying to dump salary with trying to get rid of Ryan Presley to get under the balance tax. This is the opposite of doing that if you're going to throw this big deal at Santander. So we're just getting a lot of mixed signals right now, which, it makes sense. A lot of agents putting stuff out there. They're trying to, muddy the waters, get more money for their clients. But also, Dana Brown's kind of new to us here in Houston. He shocked us with the Josh Hader deal last year. None of us saw that coming. So if he surprised us signing Santander, we couldn't say that we hadn't seen him do something like that before.
Yeah, and we'll get into the Presley stuff a little later here, but I wanted to shift gears here real quick because I was listening to Chandler Rome's new podcast, Crush City. Do him a solid and go give him a follow over on his channel. They were discussing Dana Brown's kind of inability to follow through with some of his more bold statements. Like making Tucker an Astro for life, or that Bregman was the team's number one priority this offseason. Rome says he ultimately doesn't blame Brown for the team not keeping those guys, that really he's just dealing with a situation that the team has put itself in by not signing guys earlier on in their career, specifically in the case of Tucker. He thinks the team should be more diligent going forward in locking up guys earlier, which I think we can all agree with. But he said one thing that stuck out to me that I really wanted to discuss with you guys. He talked about these potential players that the Astros could target now to lock into an early deal. He thinks Hunter Brown hiring Scott Boras over the offseason basically means that Houston has missed the opportunity to extend Brown early to a team-friendly deal. That kind of took me back because I think Chandler has his finger on the pulse of the team. Do you guys agree that the Astros now won't likely get a chance to lock up Brown early because of the Boras factor?
If they have, I'm not worried about it. Hunter Brown's 4 years away from possible free agency. He'll be 30 years old when that happens. How'd the Christian Javier extension go so far? The Braves with Spencer Strider blew his arm out. The injury risk with pitchers is greater than it is with everyday type players. Hunter Brown, who is obviously awesome plus from mid-May through the end of the season, but his next full season of quality as a major leaguer will be his first. How about putting that on the board first? And then if you want to buy out a couple of arbitration years to give him lifetime financial security that way, the Astros, for instance, with George Springer, before he got to free agency, they did 2 years, $24 million, guaranteeing him money the second season that they didn't have to. They could have gone year to year with arbitration. Didn't buy out any free agency in the process. I have no interest in going 5 years plus with Hunter Brown at this point.
Because if this is actually true, like, how do you thread this needle? This guy's had one good year and you've already missed the opportunity to sign him long term. I'm with you, Brandon. I don't doubt why Chandler believes this. It's just, as an Astros fan, it's kind of shocking. And Chandler even mentions, like, maybe they should start looking at guys like Spencer Arrighetti. And I'm just like, I mean, already? I mean, we haven't even seen him put together a full good season. Because, if you look at Hunter Brown in 2023, his ERA was over 5. And then he comes out and has this great season after he adds that sinker. And it wasn't a great season until after he added the sinker. And then I think if you're the Astros, you just want to make sure that what you're seeing is real and that it's not going to fall back the other way. But this is concerning. Yainer Diaz is the guy that I'd be trying to go after. And they may have kind of missed the boat on getting early on him also. And I wonder, a part of this is the Soto ripple effect again. All these players are looking at free agency and going, my Lord, if he's getting that much and I'm this good compared to him, then I might be able to get this much. We saw it happen with Tucker. It makes me wonder if that's going to be the new trend where guys are like, no, I'm not signing early. I'm going to wait and hit free agency. But there's always the downside of that, right? Where Boras promises everything to his clients and then sometimes doesn't deliver and the market's not there. So there is some risk involved for sure. And I look back at the Christian Javier extension. Charlie's right. So far it hadn't worked out, but Javier had proven himself a little longer before they went ahead and made that move.
Lance McCullers, anyone? Yainer is on the same clock as Hunter Brown. Right? The Astros also control him for 4 more years. So it's not a pressing need. Hey, Astros, you're asleep at the wheel if you don't lock these guys up. No. One wild card. Collective bargaining agreement expires end of 2026. We're all going to hear until we're ready to puke. We need a salary cap. We need a salary cap. We need a salary cap. Well, what if, oh my God, Major League Baseball with the Players Association, they actually get there? Whatever else comes with it, salary floor, other conditions, what are the givebacks? Well, what if with the salary cap, the players then have rights to free agency after 4 seasons of big league service time, as opposed to the present 6? Well, at the end of the 2026 season, Yainer Diaz and Hunter Brown will have 4 years of service time. So if the rules of the game rug is pulled from beneath your feet, and then, wow, the new deal effective immediately. Anyone with 4 years service time on not under contract's a free agent. Well, Hunter Brown and Yainer Diaz could advance go and collect a hell of a lot more than $200 by becoming free agents all of a sudden 2 years earlier than under the present system. The 6-year term has been in place for decades. But in negotiation, I'm just saying anything is possible. Does that or should that enter into the Astros thinking at all with trying to take Diaz and Brown out on some timeline beyond these next 2 seasons?
Yeah, and Charlie, you bring up a really good point comparatively versus position players and pitchers, because the risk is much greater on the pitchers. But it also, if I'm Hunter Brown, I'm betting on myself, and I know, like, if you're a top tier pitching, free agent, you're gonna get a big bag. And we saw it with Tucker, which was, we don't know what the behind the scenes were and how aggressively Houston tried to extend Tucker early. It seems as if Tucker wanted to hit free agency, and that was his ultimate goal, and because he wants to maximize his earning potential. So we may see that more often now. We may see less of the team-friendly deals. I think it's going to be case by case, but we probably are going to see that more with position players than we are. And I'm with you. I'm not ready to give. Spencer Arrighetti had a great, he had some great moments in the 2023 season, or 2024 season, I should say. But I'm not ready to commit to him, and because we don't know who he is yet as a pitcher. I think we have a much more informed idea of what Hunter Brown is, but with all of the injury risk that Charlie talked about, that is certainly a detriment, or a deterrent, I should say, to have an early extension. Another Chandler Rome topic that I wanted to touch on here, he is continuing to report that the Astros are still aggressively trying to move Ryan Pressly, which Josh, you brought up earlier. Obviously, the organization is a little hamstrung right now by some of the financial decisions that have not worked out as well. Pressly is owed $14 million this season. We've talked about the need to move him. I saw one of the Astros fan accounts on X. He goes by the Astros locker room. He was breaking down Pressly's value and what he projects the team could get in return. I think this was in response to a lot of fans' unrealistic expectations about what a Pressly return would garner the team. He thinks the best the Astros would get in return, with some sort of salary dump, would be to get a zero WAR player or a really low level prospect. So I wanted to bounce that scenario off of you guys, because I think it's an interesting thought exercise. Would you rather see the Astros get some salary relief and a zero WAR player back, which would thin their bullpen, or would you stick with the devil which is an aging reliever trending the wrong direction, underperforming his contract, but who can still be somewhat productive of an arm for you and for the team?
Depends on whether you can tell me what the Astros would be doing with the salary relief. Ryan Pressly should be their 7th inning guy, Joe Espada, if back, right? Hader's going to be the closer no matter what. Brian Abreu is simply a better pitcher than Ryan Pressly at this point. But if it's the difference in staying under the tax and resetting you for 2026, if it's the difference in clearing money that, okay, you're willing to swallow hard and figure out how Santander slots defensively and how he'll age. But if it's just a matter of moving Pressly's money because he's not worth $14 million and you want to get under the tax and let's pocket the savings, that's not helping the 2025 Astros at all. Pressly's still a viable mid-bullpen arm. No contender is thinking, let's trade for Ryan Pressly and make him our closer. He hadn't been good enough the last couple of seasons, and certainly not off his 2024. So for a setup reliever who, if not a dime per dozen guy at this point, is closer to that than anything special, you're not going to command quality in return for that. The fantasy would be you buy a lottery ticket with some 18-year-old, 19-year-old minor leaguer, and let's call Ryan Pressly Josh Fields, And for Ryan Presley, you get, but that's hope, dream, expectation. Presley's value is minimal, and how much of the $14 million would the Astros have to pay to be able to move him at all, and the impact it has on getting a D-level prospect versus a C-level prospect. And Presley has to agree to go where you cut the deal to send him.
Yeah, that's the big part of it, right? He's got a lot of family ties. I think his wife's from here. Kids are here. He wanted the no trade clause. He's a Texas guy, so you got to get him to agree to it. Also, the one thing, I know it's easy to kind of be a little disappointed with how Ryan Presley's season went. Brandon, you mentioned before we recorded, seems like he misses a little time every year now. The injury bug's starting to get to him as he gets older. But some of the higher level analytics say he was a little unlucky last year. He was a little better than the raw numbers tell you he was. So maybe that's kind of a glimmer of hope there that he can kind of rebound a little bit. And we all hope that Josh Hader can rebound to what we thought we were getting. And we know what Abreu is. Abreu is one of those guys I'd be looking at to try and sign, but they may have missed the boat on him. But Abreu's proven everything I need to know about him. That guy is a great relief pitcher. I wonder if we see how the season goes with Presley. If they're not able to get the salary, because really this is all about getting under the balance tax from what I hear, that Crane wants to reset it and not have to deal with those penalties. Is there a possibility that Presley pitches well and maybe you get close to the All-Star break or the trade deadline and you could move him? What would it be? His salary would, maybe not exactly half, but if it was around $5, $6, $7 million, you trade him. Maybe that's enough salary relief to get under the balance tax if you move him maybe at the deadline.
Tanner Scott, Carlos Estevez, Jeff Hoffman, all out there unsigned, all way better than Ryan Presley in 2024, all project to be much better than Ryan Presley in 2025. Now, it might take multi-year deals to sign those guys, but no team's going to give up anything of value for Ryan Presley when there are better pitchers available and other trade options. And again, no team is going to take on close to $14 million of Ryan Presley unless Steve Cohen with the Mets says, we need one more reliever. Okay, but they're not going to give you a good prospect for him.
Well,
the Astros, frankly, would take nothing for Ryan Presley if they could offload the whole $14 million.
Right, exactly. But if it's about a salary dump, Josh pointed this out, you can dump the salary towards the end of the year and accomplish the same thing because you don't have to get under that threshold until the end of the year. So they could operate above it. And if the season goes south, or even if it doesn't, even if they could just make a move, the prospect isn't going to get any better. In my opinion, I don't think the prospect's going to get any better now versus what it would be at the trade deadline. And if that's all you're going to get back as a prospect and a low level prospect, and it's all about salary dump, I think you'd probably have more interested parties towards the trade deadline as well, because you'd have teams that might be more desperate to bring in a reliever, especially if Presley has an okay season, but maybe the team's not doing so well, but he still has an okay season. I just think at this point, I would prefer they go with the devil they know, unless, to Charlie's point, unless we know that they're moving on from that salary to land a Santander or something like that can immediately improve the team. But I don't really know how you do that. I don't know how you dump that salary at this point in time to where it's a real meaningful chip for you. But Dana Brown's obviously smarter than me, so I would trust him to do it. Any final thoughts before we're out the door in this episode, guys?
Just as a tag point, if you trade Presley at the deadline, you've already paid him $9 to $10 million, right? You can't erase that from your books if you've waited to that point. But I like your point that at the deadline, teams have more clarity. Okay, we need a right-handed setup guy, or we want two relievers, and it's not going to markedly impact the level of prospect as versus trading Presley now.
Yeah, teams know the Astros are desperate right now. Like Charlie said, they would just let him go if somebody would eat the $14 million. So that's a tough place to negotiate when people know you're desperate. But that is the thing, that they're only, from what we hear reportedly, and on Thursday we'll get some clarity with what these arbitration numbers really are. But the reports are the Astros are only a couple $1 million maybe over the threshold. So if you did, in theory, move Presley at the deadline, a few $1 million of salary relief should be enough to take care of that for you. And then there was the other thing that was talked about which in Chandler's podcast, that Victor Caratini's making like $6 million. Would they consider trying to move him since they have some other options there? Or even somebody like Dubon, since we're only talking a couple $1 million, there's a few different options, a few different ways they could go here. So Dana Brown, this is why you make the big bucks, man. Go figure it out.
Indeed. And Reggie Jackson's out there if he wants to pick his brain on anything. That's going to be it for this episode of Stone Cold Stros. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to click like on the video. And if you listen on podcasts on places like Apple or Spotify, you'd be doing us a solid by give us a 5-star rating on those platforms. Charlie, Josh, and I will join you next Monday for our continued off-season coverage, but you don't have to wait that long to get your Houston sports fix. All you have to do is subscribe to this channel, Sports Map Houston. We try to go live when there's breaking news. So if there's breaking news in free agency, like say a Santander happens to come to Houston, I don't think I'm speaking out of turn to say that the three of us will be on here live talking about that and breaking it down. Also, we have
Jesse Winker will wait till Monday, right?
Probably. And if you're a Texans fan, the three of us do our Texans podcast, Texans on Tap. We're going to do a playoff preview for Chargers Texans. That'll drop on Thursday over on that channel. So make sure you're subscribed over there. And you can also find that show on podcast as well on places like Apple or Spotify. And for this show, that's going to be it for this episode. Thanks for listening. Until next time, go Stros.